Welcome back to build season. Power tour is approaching very, very quickly, and I still have, I don't know, a little bit of work left to do on the F100. We left off in the last video finishing up the QA1 suspension install up front. Now there are a few things up here that still have to be taken care of. We need to make power steering lines, and we need to figure out a brake master cylinder and a proportioning valve and a few other things, brake hoses, etc. But we're gonna skip this for now. We're gonna jump to the rear. Okay, we got the front of the truck on QA1. That kit will lower the truck 3 to 5 inches. They have another kit that can go down to 7 inches with a lowering spindle. But I don't need to be that low. I don't have to worry about the oil pan scraping on the ground. But I do need to get the rear of the truck down because I can't have this thing riding like a crazy stink bug. I'm not into that. QA1 does offer a rear 4-link coilover suspension that is all bolt-on for this truck. However, as nice as that would be, it isn't in the budget right now. But what is in the budget is this. From DJM Suspension, this is a rear shackle flip kit for the F100. Essentially, what the kit from DJM is going to do is give you a new front shackle bracket for the leaf spring. So we have to remove this bracket on both sides of the frame, undo the leaf spring, bolt on the new bracket, which flips the leaf spring mount to the top, which lowers the truck a couple inches. In addition to that, back here, there's an extended shackle, which is going to put the leaf spring up even higher, which together, the two of them should get the truck down about 4 inches, which should work really well with the QA1 up front. So in the kit from DJM, you get the rear extended shackle or the drop shackle for the rear part of the leaf spring. And then you get the front leaf spring relocation bracket. So this is going to go in place of what's currently existing on the frame. And then there's actually two locations here where you can mount the spring for 2 different drops. I'm going to go all the way to the highest one so I can get the back of the truck down as far as possible. So where do we begin? We begin right here at the front. This bracket on the frame right here has to come off. These 4 rivets have to be knocked out. And I found when I was doing the front suspension up there, these rivets can be kind of a pain. But one of the ways that actually worked is with a sharp chisel bit on an air hammer, come in here and knock the head off and then shove the stud of the rivet through the frame. So I'm gonna grab the jack, support the rear end, and then knock these brackets off. Gotta love these Oklahoma trucks. All of us Wisconsin guys are just blown away when stuff actually comes apart. And we don't have to get the torch out right away. It's pretty nice. There we go. Look at that. 1 leaf spring bolt out, no problem. All right, I've got the rear of the frame just slightly lifted off with a very, very sketchy leaning tower of blocks. And that is really leaning. Holy cow. Don't do this at home, folks. All we're trying to do is get a little bit of tension off of this leaf spring so that it can wiggle in that bracket. Now I can pop all the rivets, knock that bracket off of there, and put the new one on. Okay, and just like that, rivets are out and the bracket is removed. The leaf spring is now hanging there in space. I'm gonna scuff that, paint it real quick. We'll go on with the new bracket. Ta-da! Good as new, right? Okay, on with the new bracket. So per suggestion from DJM, the instructions, I'm putting the bracket on the leaf spring first, and then I'll actually lower the truck or the frame back down until the holes meet up and we'll throw the bolts through it. What I'm doing here is I'm lifting up on just the passenger side of the axle to try to shove that leaf spring up really, really far to get the bracket to line up with the frame. I have the upper 2 bolts in there, so I'm gonna have to kind of shimmy it around or whatever to get the other 2 bolts in, but this should work. It's gonna sit crooked on the jack stand. That's okay. I'm gonna throw my jack under the front here just to lift this bracket into place, get those last 2 bolts in. Yeah! Assault ratchet. Yeah, I know, this is just, It is still a fully automatic ratchet. It's definitely an assault weapon. It does not have a suppressor though, so this is not a tactical ratchet. It's just an assault ratchet. Oh, of course, they're both 5/8, not 9/16 like everything I grabbed. I'm gonna change out impacts for something with a little more horsepower. Oh, no way! Look at this. Look at that. The Milwaukee broke my little socket adapter off. I think I have another one, but damn! All right, so here's what the DJM bracket looks like installed. As you can see, it moved the leaf spring mounting point up quite a bit from the factory bracket. You can already tell this thing is quite a bit lower. So I'm gonna lower the jack and flip to the other side and do the other front bracket. Just to give everyone out there an idea of this comparison after you've put the DJM front spring shackle in there, I'm just gonna measure from the bottom of the bump stop to the leaf spring pad, and it looks like that is, I don't know, you could call that roughly 3 inches to the face of this bracket right here. Now I understand this isn't the most accurate way to compare this, but if we go to the same thing on the driver's side, that is like, let's see if we can get it from here. It looks to be about 5.5. So that shackle did drop the axle relative to the body 2.5 inches on that side. All right, so the next thing we need to tackle with the DJM kit is the rear shackle setup. Now this truck is a Flexomatic suspension truck, or Flexomatic spring truck, which is this extra fancy, weird looking shackle, and the leaf spring is a little bit longer. Essentially what this was supposed to do was almost act like active suspension, where it would sort of stiffen and soften the spring based on how much load was in the bed. So it has been said out there that you cannot use the DJM rear drop shackle on Flexomatic suspension trucks, and that is true if you're not comfortable modifying anything else on your truck. However, people out there have done this and do this all the time. They will remove the Flexomatic shackle and all this in this short little guy here, and then put the DJM shackle in its place like this, and it will make this leaf spring rise proud of the frame just a little bit. So if you're going to do that, you need to notch the underside of the bed. I have cut and welded so much on that bed over there that I don't care to cut 2 more spots so that I can use the drop shackle and get maximum low out of this thing. Got the rear of the frame jacked up again, kind of like I did when I put the bracket on the front, just so that I can take any weight or vehicle weight off of this spring. This thing is just floating here. So I should be able to undo these bolts right here, and then ultimately this bolt right here, and get the whole Flexomatic stuff out of the way. Right, so we got the rear part of the leaf spring undone, and do be careful. When you pop this lower shackle bolt, this thing will fly up, and it damn near hit me in the face. So just be aware of that. Yeah, this bushing down here is completely torched anyway, so it's a good thing that we have a new bushing in our new kit here. Okay, so to get this thing off, you have to pull the 2 nuts off on this little shackle in the back. Oh yeah, you can see the action there. As the truck would load up and the leaf spring would stretch, it would move this shackle forward or backwards to make the spring effectively shorter or longer to apply more or less leverage. Kind of an interesting mechanical way of giving you active suspension. Pretty neat. All right, so there's the shackle plate. Oops. There is your Flexomatic suspension shackle. Very goofy, but it works. Look at this bushing right here. Literally nothing even left on the bottom side. I wonder how long that thing has been completely, look at that. There is no bushing left. Yeah. So that, among many other things, is probably why this thing rolled like crap. So here's a quick look at what the DJM drop shackle looks like with the Flexomatic spring. Now if you can see, if you look over there, The spring is proud of the frame by, I don't know, probably 3/4 of an inch or so. This can be solved by taking a little chunk out of the box support and flipping it inside out, welding it back in. So I'm not worried about this, but look at that. Rear suspension lowered. I'm gonna measure from the leaf spring plate to the underside of that bracket for the bump stop again and see if we got any lower. From the leaf spring pad to the bump stop bracket, it's probably kind of hard to see on camera there, but that is about 2.5 inches. And on the driver's side, it's like 2 5/8. Well, there you go. From the leaf spring pad up to the bump stop bracket, we went from 6 inches down to 2.5 inches. So it's like a 3.5 inch total drop so far. I think with the weight of the box on here, maybe we will get that last little 1/2 inch. At least I hope so. Everybody could use that 1/2 inch. I get it. All right, so the DJM shackle kit, that goes on really, really easy. And this is done on the floor with jack stands and everything. This is really not a bad job at all. Obviously you need some impact tools to get the bolts apart, and make sure that you don't put your face in front of the leaf spring when it comes flying off of the frame. Whoops. It does achieve pretty close to the drop that they advertised. Either way, the rear of the truck is significantly lower than it was, and I think it's gonna look really good. I'm gonna throw the wheels back on. I'm gonna throw roller wheels on the front, and I need to get the bed back on this thing because we need to measure for wheels like immediately. Good afternoon, it's the next day. We're trying to get the bed and the front clip back on the truck, so I enlisted some help. I don't know if you can see back there. Hang on. Look who it is! Steve 2.0 is here. Right. So what do I normally say? It's time to get some shit done. Okay, so just to give you a basic idea what we need to accomplish today, we need to get the bed off of the repoo. We need to get that back on here so that we can get the bed and the wheel arch in the right place because we need to measure for wheels. Alright, so if you're doing what I'm doing and using the DJM suspension with the Flexolite or Flexomatic springs, this area right here already has a depression for clearance for the leaf spring to move around. This is a bed support right here. So in order to make clearance, what I think is going to work is if you just cut back on either side of this depression all the way to the face of the back piece here. That should give the spring enough room to move up into that area, and then at least right now the whole bed is about a 1/2 inch too far forward, so we have a little bit more clearance in here than it looks like. But yeah, I think I'm going to come in here, cut this out, and I'll show you once the notch is ready, and then we'll go to the hardware store and get the bolts I forgot to get. Okay, so here's what I was talking about. 2 quick notches right behind the head of the leaf spring down here. That should be enough to give us clearance. And if you really want to, you can take the piece that you cut out, flip it inside out right there, and then just make a patch piece for that side and for that side, and then voila, everything is still nice and strong. Okay, because I am who I am, I'm going to take this opportunity to zap those patches in. It looks like it's going to work perfectly. We'll be back. Look at this, huh? Holy cow, it's quite a difference between what it was before. Now obviously in the front we won't really tell until we put the front clip on. Real quick, before we install the front clip back on the truck, we do have to trim the inner fenders. QA1 supplies this template right here. This is the instructions for how to trim the inner fenders of the F100 to fit right over their new cross members. All you have to do is, following the line that they have drawn here, cut this out and then lay this over the inner fender. That becomes your template for both sides. All right, so here's a shot of what the inner fender, or something close to what the inner fender should look like after it's trimmed. Very similar shape on passenger side.
Better, I was like, that notch doesn't look like it's in the right spot.
Oh, that's much better. Hey, look, it fits exactly like they said it would if you put it back in the right place. My mistake. That is cool. I gotta show you guys, this is freaking awesome. All right, now, obviously, these are not the wheels that are gonna be on this truck, but take a look at this thing. Oh, it's probably hard to see on the dollies within the hoist, but she is considerably lower. I know in the front, I think these are all the way down. Coils are all the way down in the front. So this is like a 15-inch tire. I don't know, what, a 225 70-15 right now. And that thing is tucking like an inch or so of tire at the top. And at the back, we're doing the same thing. This thing looks, yes. So I wanted to put this in the video somewhere. Apparently YouTube has made some changes to the algorithm with how they're pushing and not pushing content. YouTube is doing two things that I know of that are very annoying. Number one, they are unsubscribing people. If you are subscribed to a channel and you haven't watched in a while, YouTube will automatically unsubscribe you from that channel. So I've had viewers comment saying, you put a video out over a month ago and I'm just now seeing it. And then I go to your channel and I'm unsubscribed. Look out for that. The second thing that they're doing is that even if you are subscribed to a channel, if you don't interact with the channel often as far as liking, commenting, etc., when that channel publishes a new video, YouTube will not push it to your feed, even though you're subscribed. It's ridiculous, it's super irritating, and it's just another way that YouTube is trying to screw content creators and not paying them out. As far as I understand, the only way that you can guarantee to get notified when a video comes out is to click the notification bell as well as subscribe. I don't ask my viewers to do anything. I like bringing the content to you guys for free. If you are subscribed and would like to remain subscribed as well as be informed when videos are out, hit the subscription and the notification bell. Back to the video. Okay, it is finally time to do one of my all-time favorite things. Every single project car that I do, it always takes me months to figure out what kind of wheels to put on it. I have to Google pictures a million times and search forums for hours to try to find out what wheel and tire is going to fit with my suspension setup on this particular car. I've been working on cars long enough, and I'm finally to the point where I spent a little bit of money on a tool that I think is going to pay dividends. In this box right here is the Master Wheel Fit tool from Speedway Motors. This is a tool that is going to allow me to bolt a tire to the hub, or bolt this tool to the hub, and then put a tire in place to mock up the exact back spacing of the wheels that we want to run so that I order them correctly the first time. All right, so get a look at this. Now that right there is some very, very nice fitment. I like it. This is set up for an 18 by 10, so it's an 11-inch overall width. And I know that this is a slightly undersized tire, being a 275/40/18, but this is currently set up with a 0 offset. The clearance between the sidewall and the fender, I mean, essentially they're on a collision path right now, but that's with this fender lip still being untouched. So an 18 by 9 or 10 in the back, 275/40. I think we're gonna go 0 offset.
Sure.
It seems to fit really, really nice. Okay, scratch everything I said in the last clip. We had this thing on there tweaked just a little bit, so we straightened it up. Now check this out. Okay, so this is our same 18 by, we're kind of trying to emulate an 18 by a 10-inch wide wheel. And look at this. We actually have contact to the inner wheel tub in here. So we're going to loosen the wheel up and move the whole mess out this way, deepening our negative offset. All right, so all we're doing is loosening these bolts right here, and we're going to move the whole tire out 1/2 inch. Now we have gained back our clearance to the inside wheel lip right there. Actually, we still have clearance to the outer fender as well. I don't think we'd even have to roll the fender lip at this point. Okay, I think this is where we're gonna end up. Right here. That is simulating the backspace that we really like. If we need to, we can fold the inner fender lip just a little bit and we have plenty of clearance to the inside of the wheel tub. So whatever offset we're at right now, I think this is what we're gonna stick with for the back. All right, so now that we got the tire fitting the way we want to, we need to measure the backspace. So in Speedway's instructions, they tell you to measure from this surface here to the edge of this inner bend on the tire right there. So I actually go down like this and I just add the 1/8 inch here. So that looks like basically perfectly 5 inches. So we add an 1/8, so 5 and an 1/8 inch back spacing on the rear wheels. Just want to interrupt your video for a little bit of gratitude. We had 3 more parts fund donations. Chase Wilhelm, sorry if I mess up your name, Lucas Rogg, and John Trione. Thank you all so very much. That means the world to me. I appreciate it. It's huge and it keeps us going on these projects. Back to the video. All right, so it's been a second and here's where we're at with the front wheel fitment. Now I know you're probably thinking, that's a huge wheel gap, what the hell? Okay, so a couple of things here. We do not have the drivetrain in it, it's over there. So we can't get full suspension, ride height compression. We do have the coilovers spun up all the way to get this thing to be as low as possible, and we've jacked it up as high as we can on the lift. I think with engine and transmission in here, we're gonna have a much, much shorter gap here. So we are kind of still guessing at this because you cannot put any weight on this tool. Now in order to do this perfectly, we would take the coilover completely out, but I'm not gonna do that. I just spent a whole bunch of time putting it together. So I think we're going to, and we also know, I should say this, we also notice that the tire is cambered positive at the top just a little bit, and that will also be fixed when we get this thing aligned. However, right here is a 255/40/18 in the front, and this thing actually looks really good. We turn this thing all the way to lock. I mean, there is tons of room on the tire. QA1 does say that with this coilover front suspension on an F100, you can run a 285 tire up front. And it is absolutely true. There's so much room in behind the tire here. It's kind of ridiculous. You have an enormous wheelhouse to put huge tires. I don't want to do that. 255/40 and 275/40 are readily available tires, nice and cheap. So I'm gonna run those. I think this fitment right here looks pretty darn good, and it should make this thing steer and handle really nice. All right, survey says on the front, looks like about just, what is that? That's hard to read. Looks to be just about 4 inch or 3 7/8. So I'll call it 3.75 inch backspace on the front tire. So 18 by 9 is the wheel width I'm going with, and then we're gonna run a 3.75 backspace. Good afternoon, it's the next day. I'm out here after work again. We finally got the measurements that we wanted to get this really, really nice fitment on this truck. We sent the wheel measurements off, so the wheels are being made right now. They'll be here in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, I need to solve one other problem. I mentioned this before. The rear axle, the 4 9-inch that came in this truck, came with the truck pattern, 5 on 5.5 bolt pattern, and in the front, the QA1 switched it over to Camaro stuff, which is 5 on 4 3/4. I went over that in the last video. I'm gonna take these axles to a machine shop and have them re-drilled to the Chevy pattern. We'll start with removing the Kevin brake. There you go, Kevin's favorite brakes. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell. These are pretty darn thin, and the friction material is separating from the backing plate. So we might need a set of brakes in the rear. However, the good news is, with these axles out of the way, we should have all kinds of room to fix the brakes. The best part about a 4 9-inch axle is they are bolt-in. So there are 4 retaining bolts that you have to pop out just behind the axle flange there, and then the axle will slide right out and you can leave the brakes in place. So there's this little hole right here, the access hole through the axle flange. That is your access to get at these retaining bolts. Now this is the part that can be kind of a pain in the butt, is getting the axle to pop loose out of the housing. Popular trick that I've seen, maybe originated by Freiberger, is to put the drum on backwards with a couple of lug nuts and to use it as sort of a small slide hammer. Hey, look at that. That was easy. And there you go. One axle out. These bearings don't look very good, especially that one. It's rusty, but believe it or not, even though it's rusty, it's quiet. This one here, it spins okay, but it's kind of loud. So I'm thinking we might need axle bearings at the minimum. So while we wait for the axles to be re-drilled, we can't put the car back down on the ground to roll it around because we don't have rear axles right now. So to occupy my time, I have a couple of repairs and upgrades I want to make to this FE. So considering the weight of this thing and the work I have to do to it, I'm going to put it right back on the ground where it was. That way it has less of a chance of falling on me and killing me. I'd like to meet some of you folks on Power Tour if I can, and I can't do that if I get crushed by an FE. The most glaring problem and obvious is the gasket that blew out here at the back of the intake manifold because the silicone wasn't stacked up high enough, and I also used ultra gray, shouldn't have, whoops. Intake manifold has to come off, valve covers have to come off, distributor has to come out, and I figured if I had to take the distributor out, it's not a whole bunch more work to take off the accessories in the front to get to the timing cover so that I can put a camshaft in it. All right, I'm gonna get ahead of this right now. All you in the comments are gonna say, why would you cam it at 360? Why would you waste your time? That's slow compression. It's gonna make it undrivable, etc., etc. Well, I turboed one and it's a ton of fun. So I also hate stock camshafts. I can't stand the way they sound. This thing sounds too OEM for me. I know that they're reliable and drivable, I get it. I'm gonna put a small to medium sized camshaft in here for the sole purpose of making this thing sound better. Okay, the cam I went with is a E965-P for Pro Stock, and here are the cam specs. So this is a 214, 224 at 50, and we are just over 512 and 538 lift. Now, because of the lift of the camshaft, they supply valve springs that can accommodate that amount of valve lift. We should not have any problems. They also send new lifters, new valve keepers, and new umbrella valve seals, which I will not be using. I will be using these positive stop valve seals. I'll talk all about this when I get there. Preemptively, I bought new intake manifold gaskets, a new timing cover set, and new valve cover gaskets because I know I'm going to have to pry these off of there again. Before I take anything apart, because I'm going to be changing a cam, I'm going to put the engine in time before I pull the distributor, before I pull anything else, because that way, when I know I go back together with the cam, the crank is in the right spot, I can line up timing marks and be done. So I pulled the number 1 plug on a Ford that's front left, and I'm going to bar this thing over with the ratchet on the crank bolt until I feel compression. Then I'll check to make sure that I'm firing on the number 1 plug wire on my distributor, and if I am, I know I'm in time. Before anything else is really taken off, this is a really good time to get a video or a picture of how everything goes together. Tensioner, pulleys, belt routing, all that stuff. Considering that Ford is kind of notorious for making this accessory drive system way more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm going to look back at this footage right now and figure out exactly where everything is supposed to go. But I'll also take a picture on my phone. Okay. So if we look for the timing mark, there it is down there on the crank, and we want to look for the timing indicator, which is right behind that belt. If you can see it right there. I marked them, or maybe Kevin did. Either way, we're going to crank this over until our timing mark lines up with our timing indicator or timing pointer. So that mark right there is 10 degrees. That right there should be 0. All right, there you go. So you can see this is 10 degrees advanced. The other mark is 0. Maybe you can make out the 10 degrees after on the other side. Either way, that should be it. Let's check our distributor. So we had previously marked this wire as number 1. If you follow that, that should be the loose one that I took off to verify that we're on top dead center. All right, let's pull the cap. Hey, look at that. Our rotor pointing right at the number 1 plug. We should be good to where we drop the distributor back in. As long as it is pointing at this plug wire right here, we should be all set and in time. Hey, hang on. There. Figured I'd bring you guys down to a more personal level. Oh God. Okay, now pull and twist. Hey, look at that. Pops right out. Welcome back to another fine evening. Next day. Working on getting this harmonic balancer off of here. There she comes. All right. One FE timing cover, and it only ripped the timing cover gasket right over here, so that's actually pretty good. All right, I suppose now's as good a time as any to get these valve covers off here. So I recently met a fan. He bought the rear bumper off the Repu actually. So one of these days you'll see what that rear bumper has turned into. He has a really cool idea for that. One thing he said is when he does projects, he has one box for hardware, another box for any little parts and stuff that come off, and another box for the tools. So he tries to keep things organized as he's working on a big job like this. And as I look around and I see more and more tools and parts on the ground, I'm gonna take his advice and get all the hardware in one box. All right, it is now part of this process that I am going to hate the worst, and that is getting these valve covers off. So feel free to laugh as much as you see necessary to my unfortunate choice to put way too much silicone on these valve covers to get them to stop leaking. Okay, honestly, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. All right, so with the valve covers off and all the intake manifold bolts are undone, all I have to do now is loosen the rocker shaft bolts on either side and pull the rocker arms out and the push rods out, and then we should be able to pry on this intake, get it out of the way. So overall, looking at the inside of this engine, this thing actually looks really, really clean. I'm impressed. I know it looked pretty good when Kevin and Angus worked on it. It looked pretty good the last time I touched it, but right here, you can see that smushed out part of the silicone right there. Yeah, that was our massive oil leak, blowing oil out the back of the engine. It was insane. So everything is taken out. I think I'll go after pulling the lifters real quick. Okay, so I pulled all the lifters out, and everything with the lifters was good. The lifters all pulled out really, really nice. There's no excessive wear. There's no cup shape to any of the lifters, which would indicate that they're wearing or eating a cam lobe. All right, I had to break out the hammer impact tool, and I hate every time I have to use this because it usually means that there's an improper fastener in an improper place. Stupid. There's plenty of room for this to be a hex head bolt. Why is it a Phillips? I don't know. All I know is I don't care for it. So Ford of 50 plus years ago, do better than this. I'm just messing around. I know you Ford guys take that pretty seriously when I make jokes. It's okay. All auto manufacturers have their problems. All right, there's the cam retaining plate. All right, and there we go. One factory 360 camshaft. Okay, since we are using hydraulic flat tappet lifters, I am soaking these in oil. These will sit here overnight. I have them soaking in 2050 VR1 just so that we can get oil into the cavities. I know they're not going to pump up until we get oil pressure, but hopefully it helps. Here is our new camshaft from Elgin. This is, I think it's a 214, 224. The Elgin kit comes with some break-in or assembly lubricant right here. I've done this either way. I've lubed up the entire camshaft before it goes in, or I've kind of done a lube as you go, if you will. Either way, whatever way you want to do it, make sure that the cam, the lobes, the bearing journals have tons of assembly lubricant on them. And just be very careful as you shove the cam in there. You're trying your best not to mark up the cam bearings at all. Now, we're not going to look at these cam bearings because they'll be bad. So we're not going to look, and they're going to be just fine. Matt Happel, Sloppy Mechanics, Turbo LS stuff, never look at the cam bearings. This assembly lube from Elgin is really good stuff. It is very, very sticky. Again, so what I'm doing here is liberal coating on the cam bearings and especially the lobes. So obviously this thing is going to make oil pressure because the oil system is primed. So it's not going to take long for oil to get to the lifters and the cams and stuff, and the cam lobes. This lubricant is designed to be sticky enough to sit on the cam lobe and last long enough for pressurized oil to take its place. One other tip is if you thread the cam bolt back into the cam, it'll give you just that little bit of extra leverage when you're trying to get into the very, very last cam bearing at the back of the block. One other tip you can do is you can install the cam gear onto the cam to give you just that little bit of extra leverage. Get that last bearing in there, and voila, there you go. Now I know that you have just successfully installed your new cam. Try to resist the urge to spin it in the bore to make sure that everything feels good. We have a limited number of turns on this before we get oil pressure to it, so we want to use those to line up the timing marks with the crank sprocket. Try to resist. Leave this alone until we're ready to finish assembly. All right, that's it for tonight. It's late. My arms are covered in assembly lube up to the elbow. By the way, if you don't look like you are raw dogging it at a large animal vet all day by the time you're done putting your camshaft in, you're doing something wrong. On that note, we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, next day after work. Gonna get the lifters dropped in, get the valve train put back together, and then get started scraping all that gasket off of there. Before I do anything else, as far as reassembly of the valve train, I do have to do the valve springs. What I'm going to do is use the same tool I did last time. It should be a lot easier now with the engine out. However, I have to run to the store and get an adapter for my compression tester to be able to pump air into the cylinders. New valve springs, new valve seals, new valve keepers are in. I just wanted to share with you guys the part number here. So this is an Engine Tech valve seal. This is what I used. The part number is S2980-20. This is for a pack of 5/8 inch diameter positive stop valve seals. Now these are going to seal a lot better than the factory umbrella seals that come with an FE or come on an FE. So because we're boosted, this is going to help us. Couple of tips learned from my misery. One, put a little bit of oil on the inside of the valve seal right here. It's going to make it slip over the valve boss just a little bit easier. Two, use a 1/2 inch diameter deep wall socket to drive this seal down onto the boss as evenly and straightly as you possibly can. Okay, so I set the new aluminum intake on the engine just to test fit it, and things don't look quite right. You see there, it looks like the intake manifold is actually moved rearward just a little bit, and it in fact is. You can see the intake manifold is butted up against the bracket for the AC. I think what I can do is just loosen that a little bit to get a little clearance. However, if you look down in there, we are still pushed back just a little bit. I think I'll unbolt the AC compressor, move it out of the way entirely so I can get the intake manifold sealed, because I care more about that than I do about that. Then when I come back, maybe I can just grind a little bit of the front face of that intake and get that to bolt back up. Alright, so with the AC compressor removed, the intake manifold can slide all the way forward, or centered anyway, front to rear. Everything lines up nice. I think I'll come back here and grind a little bit of this off when we're done. And or we won't put the AC back on for now. All right, we're all ready to go. Got the intake manifold gaskets laid in place with a thin coat of RTV on the inside and on the manifold side. And if you look back there, I have put an enthusiastic layer of RTV at the very, very back. That layer back there is borderline ridiculous. So is the layer here at the front. And even though this is an aluminum intake manifold, it's still pretty heavy. However, it's like a quarter of the weight of the factory FE manifold. So still a huge upgrade. I have cleaned and re-gasketed our timing cover, put a new seal in here, and put a thin layer of RTV along the bottom there. Sorry about any of the chainsaw noise. I think it's the chainsaw championships around here again. All right, same thing with the water pump, new gaskets, RTV both sides, just a light coat, ready to go on. Water pump is guided into position using the hose. Ready to put the valve train back in, because we got the water pump and the fuel pump all set up in the front, timing cover's tight, etc. So time to drop in push rods. So it can be kind of a pain to get this all lined up, just because you got to get the rocker shaft down, all the way down, and make sure that all the push rods are in the rocker arms. That can be kind of a trick. It's been a minute. Ready to put the valve cover gaskets on, and my trick for FE valve cover gaskets, and I learned this from Kevin, put a thin layer of black RTV all the way around, and then glue the gasket to the valve cover with black RTV. Hopefully this will prevent this thing from leaking like it did before, and it did work pretty good. So if you have an FE, this is one trick that you can do to get the thing to stop leaking oil. Alright, so all I did was run the valve cover bolts down just enough to touch. We'll let the RTV set up for a little longer, then I'll come back and tighten these down just a little bit more. Hopefully we'll get a good squish out of the RTV, but for now, we'll let this all kind of set for a little bit. I'll switch to the other side. Oh yeah, you're probably wondering, where did you get these sweet ass custom powered by Ford valve covers? Made them myself, that's right. I figured since we're going all out on this build, you know, with like the aluminum intake and the cheap ass cam, might as well have sent these out to the powder coat shop and get them custom powder coated. No, actually I spent like 3 minutes with a whiz wheel and a scuff pad. Looks pretty good. Got the fittings transferred over, except for one right there for vacuum for the brake booster. Dropping the distributor in now, and it's a little bit of a challenge with that oil pump shaft that kind of flops around in there, so I'm going to spend some time off camera getting that ready. But we are very, very close. Water neck is on right there with the thermostat, and I have actually foregone putting the AC pump back on the engine because we don't have refrigerant. I don't have time to get that working anyway, so I added some spacers behind the bracket there and also bolted on my new power steering pump. One thing I do still have to sort out is the outlet fitting here for the power steering pump. I think that is a -8 JIC or AN style fitting, so I have to get an adapter to go from -8 JIC to -6 so I can make my own power steering lines. I'll cover that a little bit later. Got a few more things on. New power steering pump is in, pulley is pressed on, fan is in, water pump pulley's on, and the alternator belt and the power steering belt are in. Again, I am foregoing the AC belt, so I do not have that on this setup. Here's my apology to my wife. If it's really, really hot on power tour, I apologize in advance. I know it would have been nice to have the AC working, but kind of don't have time, sorry. Good afternoon, it's a new day. We're gonna tackle some other things that you have to do, whether you're doing Crown Vic or QA1. So the engine is now ready to go over there, hooked up to the hoist. But before we put the engine in, I'm going to take this opportunity to finish up a couple things. First and foremost, we need a steering shaft from the existing column down to the new rack. And I'll show you what I bought for this. It's actually pretty simple to put this together. So here's what I got to start this process. First, I bought 2 of these universal steering U-joints. They are 36 spline on one side and 3/4 inch D or Dungeon and Dragon shaft on the other side. And then I bought a length of 3/4 inch DD steering shaft. All of this on Amazon. I will put the affiliate links in the description below. So the spline parts of these U-joints are gonna go on the steering rack and on the steering column, and then in the center is gonna be that 3/4 inch DD shaft. So all we have to do is mount this U-joint on the rack, that U-joint on the column, and then measure the distance between the two, and then cut the shaft to fit. So another thing you should do when you're setting up a steering rack, at least this is something I'm gonna do, I think I read this in a forum somewhere, is you should center the rack. So essentially what we're looking to do is make sure that the rack is somewhat centered before we hook it up to the steering column. Easiest way that I can think of to do that is to spin the rack all the way to one side, mark the location of where it is. I use the set screw as a good indicator, and then run it all the way the opposite direction to the opposite lock, count the turns, and then turn it halfway back right in the middle. So I got just under 3 rotations from lock to lock. So I turned from this lock, I turned just shy of 1.5 rotations, and that's where I'm at now. And the front of the truck looks to be relatively straight. Obviously this will get sorted out in more detail when it's aligned, but this is a good place to start. All right, so I only had to cut this piece into 3 other pieces. And yes, I nicked up the existing steering shaft. Ouch, it is what it is. So after about an hour with a triangle file, I know we still have a slice in this. Not a big deal. Quit worrying about it. If you could rotate please a little bit. I've restored all the splines on here. It's a little bit of effort. Our steering coupler goes on. We can use the set screw here, keep it in place, and this feels nice and tight, so we should be good. Now I can measure from here down to the rack, get a distance for my shaft, chop it, and shove it in. Okay, there you go. It only took one little trim cut on that bad boy to get it right there. Obviously, we're not gonna know if that's out of the way until we get the engine in place. So far, I think that's gonna work just fine. We've got the wheel clocked roughly in the cab. The steering rack itself is roughly centered. Give it a shot. Ooh. Look at that, you guys. We have steering. In case any of you are curious, here is the miles, and I mean miles of clearance that you have for anything that has to pass through driver's side or passenger side. The steering shaft fits through this massive window that QA1 has created, as well as fuel lines and power steering lines or anything else that you need. It's all gonna fit through here. So I thought I would highlight this in this video. These mounts right here are for the FE engine that I plan on using over there. QA1 makes this really easy. If I ever want to swap to, say, I don't know, maybe a Roller 351 Windsor that I have over there, or an LS that I have over there, or a Coyote, QA1 makes mounts for all of those engines. So if you go with this setup and you ever want to swap engines, you can simply just order the new set of mounts that'll put that engine exactly where you need it in this chassis. So with that, we have engine mounts in place, we have a steering shaft hooked up. The next thing I need to tackle is the brakes. To my continued astonishment, these Southern trucks are just surprising the hell out of me. If you'll observe here, both of the brake lines broke loose out of the master, and the nuts that hold the master onto the booster came off. It's amazing. Holy cow, it's incredible. These Southern trucks just come apart. So here's what I got for a new master cylinder. Now you'll probably notice that it looks just a little bit different. First of all, it is longer and the ports are on the wrong side. So that is why we are gonna have to reconfigure some lines. But also, this is aluminum. So this is a master cylinder off of a later model F100, I think a 78. They look pretty darn close. I'm just gonna check the depth on the push rod, and then if that looks good, we'll throw it on. I check that. So I throw a screwdriver in the bore, put my finger here flush with the edge, take it out, and push rod is exactly the same depth. We can use this master. Biggest thing I was worried about is if this is actually going to bolt on. And voila! Looks like it goes right in there, and we shouldn't have any interference issues with the push rod. Now I can hear some of you screaming already, "You didn't bench bleed that!" Calm down, we're going to do it. It's okay, I need to mess with all these lines anyway, so I figured I might as well not leak brake fluid all over these brand new suspension parts down here. So here's my thought on this. Now I know I have to move the brake lines from the outside to the inside. That shouldn't be that big of a deal. I think I can just either unbend those a little bit and loop them around, or I can just make new ones. Either way, down here we have a junction block, and that splits brake pressure to the front and rear. So being that this used to be a dual circuit truck, we can actually use that junction block just as is. However, everyone watching is probably thinking, what are you going to do for a proportioning valve? Right here, this is an adjustable proportioning valve. There's two fittings here. You simply install this in line with the rear brake circuit, and you have an adjustment to adjust the pressure or the bias from front to rear so that your rear wheels don't lock up and spin you out and put you in a ditch. So I'm going to add this somewhere near here since I have to reconfigure a line anyway. Then I can just leave that junction block as is and everything will be fine. I've got the lines reconfigured a little bit so that I can land them on the ports on this master cylinder. To make the flares on the existing lines, I'm using none other than the Capri Tools on vehicle flaring tool. This is a single or double flaring tool. Kevin recommends this. I will leave an Amazon affiliate link in the description. This is an awesome tool. It allows you to make really, really nice flares with lines on the car. My other tool is the big, lever action vise mounted for making custom lines off the car. That works really well. This is great for stuff in a pinch like this. All right, for those that are curious, here's how you work this tool. It comes with a positioning nut. This is a bolt that threads into the end where the die goes. And all that does is threads into the exact right depth right here. And then you shove your line in the bottom until it butts up against this positioning nut. And then you tighten down the two 10mm bolts here to clamp the tube in the die. And there you can see that the tube is exactly flush with the groove in the side of the tool. That means that it's in the proper place. Take the positioning nut out, grab the punch, and there is two operations on this punch. Operation 1 is this side, operation 2 is the other side. This tool comes with just a tiny little tub of special grease that you apply to the dies right before you run them in the tool. All right, so here we're going in with greased up operation 1. Now using a 17mm wrench on this die and holding onto the tool, run that all the way down. Once the punch is all the way down on operation 1, pull the punch out. And now you have a bubble flare. So if you want to stop here, if your vehicle requires bubble flares, this is where you would stop. And then grabbing the little grease container, lube up operation number 2, 17mm wrench, run it down. That's it. And there you go. Perfect flare every time. All right, there you go. The front brake line is rebent, new flare, fitting right into the master. Everything's nice and tight, looking good. Just have to make a couple adjustments here for the rear line, and I have to add the proportioning valve right there. Good evening. I've done a few things since I left you last. So I reconfigured the plumbing for the proportioning valve here, and I whipped up this little bitty bracket right there just to hold the proportioning valve under the master cylinder to give it a little bit of support. That way it can't be flapping in the breeze. The last little bit of plumbing that we have to take care of is the power steering lines. I need an adapter for that because the new power steering pump comes with a larger fitting than what I thought it did. So we're gonna hold off on that today. Without any further ado, we're getting this engine and trans in the damn truck. All right, here we go. Engine hoist is out of the way, and look at that. Engine and transmission back in the truck, looking awesome. There is so much room all the way around this thing, it's insane. Everything clears beautifully. I mean, look at this. Steering shaft runs right down, it's not in the way of anything. Manifold has a million miles of clearance. The exhaust pipes somehow This engine fits much better in here with this cross member. I don't know how QA1 did it, but man, it's awesome. It dropped right back into place. Everything is right where it should be. Kick ass. All right, welcome back. It's the next day. It's just after 7 o'clock. The axles came back today. So right here are the factory 9-inch axles, and I had them re-drilled and tapped for 1/2-20 screw-in studs. These axles were done by Showtime Fab and Machine. They are local to the Fox Cities area. So if you are in the Fox Cities or anywhere around here and you are looking for some fabrication, machine work, anything like that, give these guys a call. This is a husband and wife team that own this business. They're both local racers as well. So these guys love race cars. They love everything hot rod. If you need anything machining, fabrication, give Showtime Machine a call. All right, so we got new screw-in studs here for the axles, but there's still something else that has to be drilled, and that's the drums. I used a template. I laid it right over that pattern and dropped 3 bolts in the original bolt holes, and then marked out the 5 on 4 3/4 pattern. Then I drilled them with a pilot bit and hogged them open. So when I took the axles out of the rear end, I did notice that the bearings they didn't look very good. One of them made a little bit of noise. The other one was still smooth, but the grease was rusty. So I opted to just get new bearings. They weren't that expensive. The only issue is, being that this is a bolt-in axle, it means that this is a press-on bearing. The method that I found that works really good, it's just a good old-fashioned death wheel. All you do is you cut right through that dang bearing and the lock ring on there, and eventually when you get through it, you smack it with a chisel, and it spreads enough, and whoop, pops right off. All right, literally, that's all it took. 1 slice with the cutoff wheel on the lock ring and on the bearing itself. You just saw right through that bearing. I'm gonna head down the street to S Motorsports and use his press. All right, summer approved transport. Hey, look where we are. We're at S Motorsports again. Nice shirt, man. Sweet. If you guys want one of those, link in the description below. That's a shop shirt. You can get those in a bunch of different colors. What's that?
I said gotta support, right?
Right. Thank you.
You said look presentable, so.
So we are here to use Eric's press. He has a press, I do not. All right, I got these bearings on Rock Auto. These are quality built. I think these are like 20 bucks a piece. Whatever, I'm not expecting miracles, but they come with a new lock collar. So on the axle, you drop the bearing and the lock collar all the way down, and it goes on like this. So the lock collar goes towards the inside of the axle, and then there's a shoulder right there, and the bearing pushes all the way onto the shoulder. Okay. Please don't explode in my face.
No. I do have safety glasses.
I have safety squints. Almost. There it is. All right, look at that. New bearings on the axles. Everything is nice and happy, ready to go. I think we're finally good to go at the rear end. So we're back with the axles. We have brand new bearings. The last thing that we need to replace as a maintenance item is the seals in here. Now while they don't look that bad, I do have new ones, and it's not too hard to take these out. So we'll use my favorite, no it's not my favorite tool. I call this the butthole puller just because of the way it looks. You get it. This works really good for pulling seals. Unless you break it, piece of crap. Okay, so attempt number 2. We're gonna go with just the pry bar method. There, it's coming. Okay, with the wheel studs all torqued and the new axle seal in, we can go back in with the axle. There it is. You didn't think I forgot to rebuild the drums, do you? Ta-da! Brand new drum. Just got back from Automotion, had a really good time, saw a lot of really cool cars, and it was really cool to meet all of you that stopped out. So thank you very much for that. I need to put a power steering line on this thing. I found a way to adapt the factory FE power steering pump to a -6 AN fitting. That's what goes into the steering rack using fittings I got from Speedway Motors. The line and the fittings that I'm using are all from Evil Energy, which is an Amazon seller. This is PTFE stainless braided -6 AN line. This stuff has a working pressure of like 1500 PSI and a burst pressure way above that. So this is actually the same type of line I use to make my power steering lines on my Oldsmobile that have been running on there for 4 years. I use this same line for fuel line on the Datsun. It's decent stuff. It works for a lot of different things. It's PTFE, so you can run pretty much anything through it. All right, there you go. Quick little -6 line right here. For the return side, I have this fitting right here, which is a -6 90 AN to a 3/8 inch hose barb. Because the power steering return line is low pressure hose, that just goes up to the pump. All right, it's been a bit. Off camera, I pulled the master cylinder, bench bled it, and reinstalled it. Chased all the leaks from the master all the way to the calipers. I do have to still mount the support brackets on the frame, but I'll do that when the thing is up in the air again. The power steering lines are all connected. Everything is landed and tight. I put a little bit of power steering fluid in the pump. I think at this point we're ready for the front clip. Can't forget we gotta powder coat these real quick. You guys know powder coating is painting when the welds are still hot. Hey, what are you doing here?
Hey!
So look at that, Steve 2.0 is here. You know what that means. We're gonna get some shit done. We've taken care of a bunch of stuff already. We had an issue, and this was actually brought to our attention by a viewer. So thank you very much. I can't remember your name, but thank you for mentioning that our shift linkage was flopping around all over in the front. That's because the transmission mount to the transmission was actually coming loose. And now you can see these bolts that are radically too long. They're actually the right thread. There were 7/16 bolts in here before. They needed to be 1/2 inch. So put a tiny bit of Loctite on both of those. Now we've got a mount securely fastened to the trans and securely fastened to the cross member. Cross member's bolted in with new lock nuts over here. We are all set as far as mounting drivetrain to frame. We're gonna throw the drive shaft in next and try to button up everything else underneath so that we can bring this thing back down for the front clip. Okay, it's been a minute. We have done a ton of things off camera. Underneath the truck is all taken care of. Drive shaft's back in. I replaced the one little adjuster cable on that side of the drum over there. Drums are back on and adjusted somewhat. The front, the brake tabs are now welded in. Everything is nice and happy. The spring clips even fit to hold the lines in place. We cracked the bleeders on both calipers and had fluid at both. So I want to show, I think we've got brakes. Oh, yeah.
Split in it.
Yeah, we have something
brakes.
resembling brakes.
Woohoo!
Welcome back. It's a few days later. I have just been plugging away at all kinds of little stuff off camera. Obviously in the last clip we put the front clip on. We have the bumper on now, and I have been working on hooking up everything under the hood. Wiring, radiator hose, tight tensioning belts, getting the power steering lines all set. I still have to connect the fuel line. All the engine wiring is reconnected. All of the starter solenoid and alternator wiring is reconnected. We're just waiting to do downpipe and charge pipe up to the carburetor. At this point, I have just a few more items under the hood that I have to button up in order to get ready to run the camshaft in. But something incredibly important happened, and I can't wait any longer to share it with you. I have to show you what I did for wheels. When I started this build, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do anything cool with the suspension. QA1 jumped on board and helped us out with the front end, which is freaking awesome. I knew I was going to need custom wheels of some sort. Forged aluminum wheels are out of my price range right now. I can't afford those. But there is another company out there that does custom wheels, and they're incredible to work with and all made in America. I reached out to none other than Detroit steel. Picked up a set of 18 by 9s, 5-inch backspace in the front, 18 by 10, 5-inch backspace in the back. These are Ambassador artillery wheels, powder coated in a satin black. These are absolutely gorgeous. They're incredibly heavy duty. I could not be happier to be working with Detroit steel. I think it's gonna look perfect. So I'm gonna get these mounted up on the truck, maybe adjust the coilovers a little bit and let you guys see what it looks like. All right, here we go. First look at the Detroit steel wheels. Look at these things. Oh my God, they look so good. Man, just enough dish. It's pretty tight to the fender well on the front. We do have a little bit of rake going on, and this was the thing that I was a little nervous about. In the back, the wheel fitment actually looks pretty good. We have a little bit of gap to the top of the tire, which I think will level out some when we load up with cargo. However, it's probably really hard to see on camera, but there is a little bit of a rake towards the front. I'm not sure how I feel about that. So I know the hoist is in the way, but it's terrible weather outside and this thing doesn't yet run. But there is kind of a look at what we get with those super sweet wheels. I wonder if we are gonna have to lower this thing just a little bit more. In person, it looks like still a little bit high in the front, and you know, it's got a slight rake to it, but that's all for now. Okay, and that's where we're gonna call it for this one. We did a ton of work. QA1 suspension's completely installed, rear suspension's fixed, wheels and tires are on. We are headed to an alignment in a week. We have a whole bunch of other stuff to do, including cam break-in. We'll see that in the next episode on the F100 as our final prep for Power Tour. I cannot wait to meet some of you out on the road. I'm really excited to see everybody that can make it. I'm really excited to see how this truck drives. So if you like what you're seeing, consider subscribing. Make sure to hit that notification bell. Thank you all so much. I will see you in the next one.